Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Merlin's First Impressions, I guess. I don't do too many of these. I've actually been pretty busy lately, so that's kind of one reason why there hasn't been a lot of output consistently with videos, so it's been sort of like a mini hiatus lately. Hopefully, in a couple weeks, I might have some time to maybe get back to doing some more videos and stuff, but we shall see. But the point of this video, why you're watching this one, is because apparently the Netflix live-action Cowboy Bebop series was dropped, I guess, just the other day, yesterday, so the 19th, as of recording this. So I was like, hey, I had planned to take a look at it and talk about it because, there's obviously been a pretty big focus of anime on my channel, and Cowboy Bebop's a classic, and it's available for streaming pretty easily, so not that hard for me to at least check it out. I thought I'd at least give my 2 cents on what little I've seen. Though I want to say I thought it was really interesting because I have been pretty busy lately, but this snuck up on me. Like I must have missed because I saw some advertisements for it. Like I knew it was coming, but I looked it up not that long ago and I didn't see a release date. So I don't know if there was a release date and I missed it, or they just kind of secretly released it and it's gonna kind of climb the charts, because sometimes I think they drop things, but I know usually I think they have specific dates for things to let people know, for their schedules or whatever, but I don't know if this was a surprise release or not, so let me know about that, because I was so surprised, like as busy as I've been, that I completely missed it. Like I was like last night, I was like, oh yeah, somebody actually mentioned to me, I think I saw a post, it was Lunar Spiral on Facebook talking about it and kind of her feelings about it, and I actually found, that's how I first found out it was on, so it completely caught me by surprise, really snuck up on me a little bit. So yeah, I don't really feel like I have a lot of time this weekend to watch the whole thing, or if I will, this is not a full series review, and you know how I am if you've been watching me for years. I typically like to kind of let things settle and look at the whole piece and really give it a lot of good thought to give a good kind of well-developed statement about how I feel about it. That's typically the way I do things, which is why I don't usually keep up with weekly episodic stuff, because I'm just too busy, and it's I don't know, there's too many things I want to watch, and then I'd be like, what am I going to watch? So but this one I was like, I at least want to kind of give my 2 cents on the first impressions of just the first episode, and I usually like to try to go in blind on these things and make my own impression. But my introduction was somebody's sort of review on it, Lunar Spirals, and then I just kind of immediately got me curious, and I saw generally how the ratings were, but I still am pretty good about keeping an open mind, and I know how, like, when there's a lot of big fan, obviously compassion and excitement relating to a particular property or story, franchise, people get a little heated, and it might be very emotionally driven and not the most fair and even-keeled review for things, especially something that just came out. It's like, right now I think on Rotten Tomatoes it's about 50-50 critics and audiences, so it's very divisive, like kind of straight down the line, which I thought was very interesting. So alright, little bit of background. I mean, for those of you that don't know, Cowboy Bebop is a show that I confess I don't think I have as much love for as some people do. That's not to say that I don't think it's excellent. I mean, it's still one of my favorite anime series. I remember I did a video years ago with, I think, my top 20 series, and it was on there. I think it's a great series. I do love it, but it's not like my number one personal pinnacle, even though you could argue, is it one of the best, one of the most influential? Obviously it's kind of one of the great gateway anime because it's so incredibly well done as a show, just for many different reasons, which we could talk about, and I'm sure I will at some point in the future, but it's also kind of designed in a way that I think is a little more accessible to Western audiences. It's not overly anime-esque with a lot of, exaggerated, dialogue and mannerisms, and with silly animation, and not the exaggerated eye sizes and multicolored hair. It's not too wacky in comparison to a lot of other shows, and it's, even though it's science fiction, it's fairly grounded and more realistic than a lot, and it's kind of got more Western sensibilities to it than ones that are very Asian. So I think that's another reason why back in the Adult Swim days it was something that really caught on as a really good introduction. It's one of those shows that if you're new to anime, or if you know somebody that doesn't really like anime, you're like, okay, well, watch this, and there's a good chance that it'll probably change their mind about the medium. At the very least, even if they don't become big anime fans, it's like they'll probably like that show. It's one of those ones where it's like it kind of almost transcends even people that aren't necessarily drawn to anime. It's just a really good show. Period. It's one of the greatest from what I've seen. But even though it's not one of my personal favorites, like my absolute tops, it's still pretty high up there. So but that's how I feel about it. So I was gonna try and watch this and keep it. I'm trying to kind of look at it as its own thing, but I realized that it's impossible. Pretty apparently right away why you can't, because it's clearly trying to be not only an adaptation of the general source material, but of exact episodes and iconic scenes. So as an adaptation too, I have to look at it because it's very clearly trying to be a fairly close adaptation, I think, from what I've seen. It's been a while since I've watched Bebop, but I have a pretty good memory of a lot of the episodes that I saw. So alright, if you want the short version of it, the review, I would say that I think it's okay. I think it's all right, and I think that maybe that's disappointing for some people. I'm not going to say that I love it, because I didn't. But there were things about it I liked. I was mostly enjoying what I was seeing, and was kind of curious to watch more, especially how they kind of end the first episode. Because they have slightly altering slightly different things, but I found a lot of points that I just thought there were some odd decisions and things I didn't think I liked quite as much, and I kept feeling like it was lacking something. I know Lunar Spiral gave it kind of a low rating. She really didn't like it for the most part, and I just got the impression from few fronts of things on the Google search that it seems like people were having issues with it, but I didn't look at any specifics. So, as I was watching it, I kept having this feeling of like, okay, this is missing something. Like, I kept thinking, okay, they clearly have studied the show. Like, people, there's no doubt, people have watched it. It's not just surface level stuff. They have clearly watched some of the anime, tried to represent the characters well. It's not like they completely ignored it. That's the thing. At least in the most general sense. There's some attention to detail that's really good. But I kept thinking that it's clear that there was money spent on certain things and effort and time. But it also looked like it was a little. It looked like it wasn't the most ambitious in terms of production I've seen. Like, it was kind of grounded, and like a lot of the internal sets, a lot of stuff that was just individuals in the rooms, like when they were in the casino, for instance, it looked a little more low budget to me, whereas a lot of the space-faring stuff, like the ships and the space stations, those look really cool, and some of the weapons are cool. But it's this weird contrast of like, some of it looks really cool and some of it looks good, but it doesn't look like something that maybe Netflix put as much money into as they have other things like Stranger Things or something. Just the way it was shot, some of it looked a little flatter, but intentional. Like, the whole thing is trying to be like a little more grounded. And I think that's probably my biggest complaint from really an aesthetic point of view, and that's kind of my biggest issue with the whole show, is that really, you could kind of nitpick things here or there, but for the most part I thought, okay, this seems like Cowboy Bebop to me. In a general sense. I was like, okay, this seems like Cowboy Bebop. In a general sense. But it was missing something. Like, what? I feel like there are parts of it I feel like it's dragging a little. Some of the pacing's a little off, and it's like, what's it missing? And I think it's missing something that is partially specific to animation in general, but also just the way that Cowboy Bebop was initially constructed, and some of the things that I like, and I think a lot of people really do. I think the biggest thing right out of the way is that even though it's I think visually, and I think the portrayals of the characters, and as well as the set design, I think that there's some definite faithfulness to the ideas of Bebop here, for sure. But the fact that it's not animated, I think just makes it lack something, because even the fight scenes, which are pretty well done, there's some good choreography with the fight scenes when Spike is fighting. I thought it was good, but I obviously I've seen a fair amount of martial arts movies, and I was thinking I've seen some really good martial arts, and I didn't think it was quite on that level. It seems kind of realistic, but not the most intense, super fast wire work or anything ridiculous like that. So it wasn't that over the top in that sense. But in the anime, I'm thinking about when Spike is fighting. He's got such fluid movement. He's almost moving like liquid. It looks almost unnatural. I mean, it is still within the realm of what the human body can do, but it just looks so fluid, and that's just something that the animation of that show really conveyed really well. It's just for those fight scenes, like the way that Spike fights is kind of iconic in itself, and they did a good job of trying to emulate that, but it's still kind of lacking because it's not animated. And also, I'm gonna kind of tie this into something else, but it's the other issue I think I had too is that there were pieces of the episode that seemed that they had a lot of some decent atmosphere, kind of that neo-noir vibe with the jazz and the shadows, and you've got the woman in the corner just kind of being mysterious, like all those tropes, which is fine, good with Bebop. But the music here I know is good. It is good music, but the soundtrack for Bebop, and for what I remember this episode, because they are basically adapting the first episode of the anime with the Red Eye, and it just the atmosphere of the music and the use of shadow, and the animation itself with even some of the still shots, and like the close up of the woman when Spike is kind of looking at her, when she's about to get killed, like just those little quiet moments. Even though it's in a shorter runtime, it feels like it just has so much more emotional punch than this episode, which had a little more plot to it. They kind of, picked other things around it to flesh it out. But this is about twice the length of an anime episode, and I just felt like the first episode, the episodes in general, Bebop, are packed so densely with story, but you don't have much time to get bored, but they still have those quiet moments which really resonate with a lot of emotion and atmosphere. And I feel like that's just something that's lost. And so basically with the animation and really the other aspects of the atmosphere, and also just the iconic dub, I mean, pretty much one of the most beloved dubs for voice acting in anime history. I mean, Steve Bloom, it's just, and and John Cho, I think, is doing his best faithfulness, but that voice, like, that's Spike Spiegel, and I get this is a different take, but that the dub, those voice actors brought so much to why the show is so popular. In fact, a lot of people, from what I understand, like the dub more than the sub. I mean, one of the few times you won't hear much argument about that, but like the dub is pretty beloved, and I think that, not that they think these actors are bad, because for the most part the acting was fine, except some of the side characters, they seemed like they were kind of doing more over-the-top cartoony stuff, but then again, Bebop has some of that too. The tone can be, kind of silly and kind of high energy, and sometimes kind of slow and dark and brooding. They could juggle that, but I don't know. I think that the general atmosphere with the music, all what the animation itself can kind of do, being so well animated, especially with those fight scenes, and just the acting from the voice actors, I just think that that stuff being so integral to why I like Bebop, and it just seems like it is Bebop, and it kind of brings me to my main point with my biggest problem is, I felt like this was trying to be a faithful adaptation, but I thought that they were going to try to do more original stories, maybe have this take place, kind of during the show, and just do original things, or try to do a different spin on it of the main story. That I think would have maybe been wiser, because I think that maybe one of the big reactions that's negative for people, and kind of my biggest reaction to it, was that they seem like they're trying to make an exact adaptation of bringing these characters to live action from specific episodes. they literally show that in the opening, and that kind of says it all right there. Is in the opening they basically they do a like shot for shot, text for text, frame by frame recreation of the anime's theme instead of doing their own original thing. And I was expecting an original. Netflix does pretty good intros, and it's well done, but it's like I thought it looked like this whole thing just feels like a really good fan recreation, which is not really an insult, because I think a lot of fan films have been great, and a lot of cosplayers and independent filmmakers have done live action shorts and stuff for comics and anime and things like that, and that's great. That's fine, but that's kind of what felt like Netflix was sort of doing, and that opening just kind of it made me just sort of think, and a thought that I had as I was watching much of the episode. I'd rather just be watching the show, like the original show, the anime, because like it's like this. And I don't think it's bad, but the anime is better. It's just better. And I'm kind of thinking, why make this? And which I know comes up a lot with adaptations. And to be honest, I thought it was about on the same level as some of the anime adaptations I've seen from Japan, which are kind of okay, like some of the better ones. So I think there's definitely been worse adaptations out there. But as I was watching it, I kept thinking about the Lion King comparison, because the CGI Lion King remake came out a couple years ago, and I remember seeing that, and I thought that was fine, but it was kind of frustrating and disappointing because it was pretty much the exact, I'm talking like almost frame for frame, scene for scene, the exact same movie as the original Lion King, and except they were missing two things. Because they were trying to make it more realistic, which in itself was cool, making the realistic animals seem like realistic lions and whatnot, they couldn't do all the cartoony stuff that kind of added to the fluidity and fantastical elements that made it, a popular animated film. You kind of lose something when you're trying to make it more restricted to something realistic. It's kind of that trade-off. And also the music wasn't quite as good, and that was also kind of connected to the issue with the animation as well, because a lot of times, remember in the original Lion King, whenever they'd have a musical section, they'd almost teleport and have weird different backgrounds for no particular reason, because it's the musical section. We can get creative, we can get weird, it doesn't have to all be in the jungle or the desert, but that didn't happen in the movie, so it's like you just have these realistic lions kind of singing, and it's just sort of weird, so it's like, this is what this reminded me of. It's like, okay, it's kind of cool you're doing this, but it doesn't really seem necessary. It's like, it's kind of like a cool project, but I might watch more of it just out of curiosity. Maybe it actually gets worse as it goes along. Maybe they try to actually do change things, but based upon comparing the first two episodes, I'm just like, I guess it's kind of cool that this is a thing, but I'd rather just watch the actual anime that's on Netflix. I put it in my queue. I'm like, I need to watch this again. So I'm more likely to just watch that again, on my list of many things to rewatch, because I want to rewatch a bunch of things. Got a long list of things to read and watch to catch up on. And so I'm more likely to watch that again than I am to actually watch this. I might, so, and that's just my biggest issue with it, based upon my first impressions of the first episode. Based upon that, I don't think it's terrible. I think it's okay. It's fine. I think the acting, for the most part, was pretty good. I thought the choreography was decent. The costumes are cool. I think they were kind of cursing a little too much. They were dropping the F-bomb a lot, and they didn't really do that too much in the show, from what I remember. So it's kind of like, we'll make it more edgy, even though, Bebop was always pretty mature and adult without having to resort to that sort of stuff. So I don't know. I thought that might have been kind of missing it, but clearly people that were working on this have a lot of respect for the source material and are certainly trying, so that's evident. But I think that, at least from the first episode, it feels like there's just something that's kind of missing, and it's not really changing anything or adding anything new or different enough to say that I could recommend it thus far. So I might have to continue watching it, maybe, to give an idea. But if people have watched more of it, let me know if there is something different. But like I said, some of the sets were cool. some of them weren't like, they didn't seem like quite the best. Like the cinematography wasn't bad. I liked the editing, actually. I thought there was some good editing. The costumes were faithful, I think, and simple. So it seemed like it was well made. It was competently made, but there's just something was kind of missing, and I think that maybe they just, I don't know, didn't really do anything different enough to kind of separate it thus far. But then again, this is just sort of my review, first impressions of the first episode of the Netflix live action show. So I'll admit, I don't even know if I'm going to watch the whole thing. I'm not sure. But let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. If you've watched more of it, maybe let me know if you'd like me to watch more of it, so I could give a more full review. Maybe down the line. I've got a little bit of time coming up this week here, so I have a little gap where maybe I could get a video or two done, and then I have to kind of go back to school for a while. So it's busy, but I have a little window of time where I might be able to do something. So if you want me to watch more episodes and review it, I will. Or if you want to recommend any other show or movie or comic or game or something, I'll try to track it down and do it, because I don't really have anything specifically on the schedule. It's just like, who knows? Maybe in a couple weeks I might be able to tackle a few things. But in the meantime, let me know what you thought about Bebop if you have seen it. And if you haven't seen it, those are my thoughts. And basically, it's kind of might be worth watching as a curiosity. But so far, I mean, I would rather just... I kind of want to go back and watch the first episode of Bebop again, because I was just thinking, oh, that was so good. And I liked what I saw, but it just wasn't quite to that level. So I'd say just watch the first show right now. All right, everybody. Well, hey, thank you for watching or listening if you were, and I'm gonna say stay magical.